Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Evolution Now. I'm your co-host, JJ Wolf, here with Damien Chinappi. What's up, man?
Come on, brother.
How you doing today? What's on your mind?
Cutting weight for a role, so feeling like crap, but it's what I signed up for. You?
Yeah, man. Well, it's Friday, and I did a lot this week, so I'm looking forward to, the weekend. So tell me a little bit about the role that you got coming up.
Yeah, so it's a Tubi original that's shooting out in Michigan for 18 days of production. I'm on for 14 of them. I'm playing a recovering on and off again drug addict. And so it wasn't asked of me to cut weight for this role, but some of my heroes, Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale, these guys, they take on these roles and they do weight transformations. I want to emulate that. So it kind of went without saying that I was going to cut down some weight, and I was already pretty lean. And so when you do that, your mind will start to play tricks on you and try to get you to eat, and you don't sleep well and you're on edge. And one of the things I've thought about is just getting the emotional current of the character right. And I think I'm there because I'm on edge. I don't really like talking to people or being around people. Constantly thinking about not the drug that this character takes, but like food, which can become a drug. And I think the emotional current is there, which makes me really happy. But at the same time, it's an absolutely wretched way to go through life feeling like this.
Oh man, it does sound wretched, atrocious. You being hungry all the time, going through a body modification to that degree. I mean, it's got to have some serious mental repercussions. But I mean, that is a serious feat, and it's an act of great determination. And earlier, before we rolled, you said, which awful do I want to feel? The awful of this process and then actually following through, or the awful of not doing this? And obviously, you want to feel the accomplishment. You want to feel the reward that you're only going to get if you go and embrace the suck and make it through to your goal. So
100%. And I will say I know how ridiculous it is, like, just not eating, and that's your problems. You don't have problems, and I know that. But again, like, as artists, there is a part of us that wants to suffer for our work. And, people just go eat an apple. If you were to say that to me, eat a sandwich, it would piss me off significantly because it's like you don't get what I'm trying to do. But I know you can appreciate what I'm talking about.
yeah, well, you want to affect change in that way. It's about consistency. It's not responding to your impulses. It's not cheating here and there. You have to be scientific. You have to be rigid to affect change and get the results that you're seeking.
Yeah, spot on. And you're ignoring a basic human need, food, eating, right? And it's all around us. It's everywhere. Like I went to get a coffee the other day at a convenience store, and I'm just like everything about that day, from the traffic in the morning to just the line inside of this convenience store that had a coffee shop. I'm sitting there waiting, and I was just like, today's going to suck. Okay, just what can I do within that suck, to your point? Embrace the suck. And I'm standing in an aisle waiting for my coffee, and it's like the candy sugar aisle. And I was just looking at all the processed sugar and food and bullshit, and I was like, man, this is so wrong. This is such a...
That you're starving yourself, or that stuff exists?
No, the stuff that's put in a convenience store. I'm looking around, like there's a Carvel cake in the freezer. There's just different packets of candy and sugar, and I love all that stuff. But I had this moment of
Do you love it or do you like it?
No, I love sugar.
Love it.
I
love it.
Love donuts. I love cake. I love candy. I love all that crap. I don't love what it does.
What do you love about it?
It's amazing. As a kid, I'd eat it all the time. My dad has a super big sweet tooth, and it's a high. A sugar high is a legit thing. But I don't love what it does to me. I don't love how it makes me look. And so it's just balancing that. But I was looking at the stuff in the aisle. I'm like, man, this is what's so wrong with without getting too pretentious, society, it's like, this is the stuff at a convenience store. Loads of sugar, fatty foods, just bad foods that'll give you a little spike and then a crash. But
oh yeah, cancer bar, bags of diabetes,
it's so
candy.
good. So good. You're not a big candy guy?
You know, I have been. I have been at times, definitely. When I was a young guy, I think when I was 13 or somewhere around there, last time I went trick-or-treating, I remember I brought it to the grocery store in a bag because they have a scale there on the, I think I got like 15 pounds of candy or something. Just disgusting.
Just setting absolute records. And speaking of Halloween, I love the fact that you look like Tony Stark right now. I'm just going to throw that out there. Badass.
You will. Thank you very much. You know, these glasses I think you're referring to, they do have a lot of different purposes. I call them my happy day glasses because if it's a little overcast, it makes the day seem a little bit more warm and sunny. And there's also the blue light blockers. Also, if I'm out riding a bike, it blocks the wind and the debris. Also, the twilight makes things easier to see. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so we know a little bit about what's going on with me in my life. What's been new with you?
What's new with me? Just working my ass off. I don't know if I can swear on this thing. Working my ass off. My main client right now is a guy named Rich who runs a construction company. And he started in 2016 with a company called Custom Carpentry Solutions in Massachusetts. He then came to Florida, Custom Carpentry FL. And after a couple of years, he realized that there's a lot more money and just bigger projects can really support a family and a team and really grow a company in the commercial sector. So he's moved into more commercial general contracting. He's brought on a couple of guys that have substantially more experience than him, guys in their 50s and 60s. And, you know, official GCs, licensed people to manage the projects. And so, you know, he went from, you know, a few $100,000 in projects to now they've just crossed 3 million this year. And I'm doing all their websites and all of their video production content and all their digital marketing. And so that alone, give a little snapshot of my brain. This is a sticky board of all the to-dos for these projects that I have going on with that company. So that's pretty new because it's just stepped up to a different level. We have 3 new websites and different brands. We're starting an equipment rentals branch. There's a secondary brand that's called Retail Renovations because we do a lot of mall and retail. We call it build outs. So if a franchise is creating a new location, such as a Victoria's Secret or there's another one they've done a couple of, Sugarfina. You heard of Sugarfina? Bet you'd love Sugarfina.
Candy store?
Yeah, it's a candy store. It's like a mall candy store. It's like fancy. They have little boxes shaped like houses, and you go in, you pick out the fancy thing, you build your little nice box. It's $572. I don't know how much it actually costs. I mean, it's a great business model.
That's cool. That sounds like a lot on your plate. So what has been the biggest challenge? Has it been the organization? Has it been the day-to-day actions you need to take? What's been the biggest challenge in this business collaboration?
I would say solitude actually has been the biggest challenge because I'm executing a lot of this work. We do have a couple VAs and I am starting to hire a little bit of assistance, but I'm the best one that I know at these tasks. And so I'm at this threshold where it's more cost efficient for me to just bury my head and get all the work done than it is to hire somebody else. But that's kind of this threshold in my business that I'm working on crossing, is bringing on other people and delegating in a way that's financially feasible to people that can actually get stuff done. Like, for instance, he hired a VA who's been doing some appointment setting and administration tasks and things like that. That's, I think, out of the Philippines or something. And he had them design a cover for their estimates PDF that they send to their clients. And the design just, to my eye, just was unsatisfactory. It's just unacceptable. And in the moment, I had to drop what I was doing and make a new cover, because otherwise this company that I'm helping my friend grow would then be sending out this just mediocre design to companies that they're trying to get $700,000 contracts with. You know what I mean? So some of these, the basic mall franchise build out is around 250. You know, some of these other bigger projects, like they did something for an aquarium, they did something for I forget if it was a library, or I don't know, it wasn't a library, but anyway, in the commercial general contracting world, some of these contracts, you know, obviously get into the millions, and at that level, if your PDFs look like crap, you know, you're not going to get the bid. So anyway, that's just an example of, like, I've been doing design for 15 years. So I'm able to go in and spend 45 minutes and make something that looks very professional, clean, sharp, it's on brand, it's impressive, because I'm also able to look at it from the marketing lens of what are the key things that need to be seen on this page to impress upon the viewer the stature of this company and the reliability and the values and the integrity, right? And then also from a design perspective, what phrases, words, images should the eye be drawn to first, and in what order on the page, right? You know, should the tagline of the company be the biggest words, or should the name of the company be the biggest words? You know, and obviously some of it's subjective, but some of it's quite objective. You know, you want the name of the company to be substantial, so the person immediately says, oh, this is from, you know, ABC Construction, and, you know, this is, you know, and et cetera.
So is it fair to say it's a very intuitive process where you're taking the experience you have in marketing, knowing what the company and the people within it stand for, and then just saying, wow?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I would say it is an intuitive process. You know, it comes naturally at this point for me to look at a design and say, this is good, it needs improvement, and to figure out what the best step forward is and how to get it done.
So solitude, you said solitude's the biggest challenge. Now, is it just your capacity to work at volume, or is it the fact that you're by yourself?
Well, I think it's an interplay of both of those concepts. Part of it is environmental. I've just moved, you know, back to Miami Beach a few months ago, and my apartment's a little small. In the past, I've paid for co-working memberships to go and work in a professional space. Right now, I'm trying to be a little bit more budget-minded because I have some serious real estate investment goals in my mind and in my heart, and I know that every few $100s extra that I'm spending per month is a few $1,000s a year that I'm not saving towards investment. So there is a WeWork, great co-working space down the street that I've had a membership to off and on throughout the years. And I do like working out of those spaces, but again, it's $350 a month to have access to that space. And is that actually necessary? And that's something I'm evaluating right now, is does paying $350 a month for access to a professional workspace allow me to make more than $350 additional income per month based on the productivity and energy that I get from going to that space? Because at the end of the day, going to a co-working space and being surrounded by others professionals that are dressed professionally, that have gotten up and started their day in a professional way, or speaking and interacting in this professional environment, that does have an effect on one's ability to concentrate and be professional. I mean, it's a funny word to think about. What does it mean to be professional?
So, I mean, the environment totally plays a factor in your productivity. And what's funny is, you know, I've worked in my room, I've worked in the apartments I've lived in, and when I've gotten into really good grooves of just getting up and getting after it, not like any crazy morning routine, the environment starts to pull you into the direction of work. But the third book I wrote, once I finished that, I kind of took my foot off the pedal, and that I wasn't as primed to work in my apartment. So have you found that, you know, your apartment at this current juncture is propelling you, or do you feel like you do need to get out of it to work? Hence the we space and hence the evaluation.
So I'm not sure if it's a personality type thing or if it's all habits. Obviously, the better the soil, the stronger the tree, the plant is going to be. Environment is an important factor. However, there's countless stories of people that triumph over all kinds of adversity to then meet their goals and to move from one town to a better place, or, you know, across the world to find better opportunity, obviously. So to your question of whether the apartment is limiting, what I like to do is create some variety in my schedule that wouldn't naturally be there. So one of the obvious things that I do is I go out to cafes. Most days, not every day. And I'll go out maybe in the morning for a couple hours or the afternoon. You know, I have a friend, a very good long-term friend of mine that works at a cafe that's kind of across town. Kind of gives me a reason to go on a little mission. Like I go to the cafe, we have a little side chat. He's working, I work for an hour or two, maybe one of the tables, you know, and that mixes up the day. Gives me a reason to get out of the house. Because if I just wake up, do work, and never leave the apartment, that doesn't feel healthy. I don't feel inspired, right? I don't feel activated. I don't feel healthy. So I did, to, like, for instance, today, you know, I went for a walk. I did some little bit of work on my mat, you know, a little bit of workout, a little bit of breath work. And so I think routines and how we structure our day when we're an independent creator is important. When we are an entrepreneur that reports mostly to ourselves, you know, I think anybody listening to this and watching out there can relate that, you know, when you're the one directing your time, it can be a little difficult to stay disciplined and to have the accountability of, I'm going to start this task at 10 a.m. when, oops, I got to switch the laundry from the washer to the dryer, you know, these kinds of things that come up, or other things like, oh, it's a little untidy in here. Let me tidy up. I mean, you know, I could just talk on this forever because I do think about it a lot, is how to make my workspace more efficient. One thing that has actually become abundantly clear to me is that one of the most effective things I can do to get started is to make sure that the room is reasonably tidy, but even more so is to clear off the work table. You know, like right now I've got a bunch of sticky notes, my keys, my sunglasses, my headphones, a hat, a bowl that I had some breakfast in, and a book. If I'm going to begin working at this table after this call, I'm going to clear everything off of the table. So there's just the laptop and the relevant notebook and maybe my phone. I might even just turn my phone off, put it in the other room.
Yeah, I mean, having a clean workspace is super key. And I don't like when people are like, oh, the most creative people are messy. It's like bullshit. Show me that statistic. Like, creativity is taking something that's internal and manifesting it in the external world, like as a painting or a song or a sculpture. And that takes precision. And granted, are there some messy creative people? Sure. But if your room is an absolute mess, the chaos of creation seems to get lost within that, versus let me channel my creativity toward keeping a clean room, because for better or for worse, the external environment is a product of your creativity. And I think if you can keep that sharp, focused, and precise, that then translates to a sharp, focused precision within your creative means. That's what I found, at least.
I appreciate the perspective. I would throw this out there, that there's a lot, it's almost like quantum physics and the observed particle. So in quantum physics, there's this concept where a particle is in quantum superposition. It's anywhere, it's nowhere. And then as soon as it's observed, it has to strike a form, because that's the plane of existence and the dimension of reality that we exist in. So it's not, is the room always messy or is the room always clean? it's recognizing what are the cycles and how do you maintain those cycles for optimal performance and use of that space. And so I would pass it back and use a quote that I just was thinking of in my head, which is, let me clean it up so that I can make a mess.
Great quote. And I like that you said cycles. Like you're in, like film production, you're in production, the office is going to be a little messier, but it's every day you're showing up and creating, and that mess is a byproduct of the precision you put forth in your creative endeavor. I just think at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to straighten things out than to let it just descend into absolute madness and to just be a giant mess. And you know, there's obviously more than one way to skin a cat, but being aware of those cycles is definitely key. But I love that you mentioned quantum, because it's nowhere, it's everywhere. And when you look at it, it finds a definitive point. And that very much feels like art. It can be everything or it can be nothing. And the second you begin, it's one thing. That's evolving and changing to be what it ultimately will become.
Amen, brother. Amen. I love that you put the word evolution in there. As we have these conversations, particularly the ones where it's just you and I, one thing we can potentially do is to use that term and to weave that in more consistently in our conversation, evolution, and bringing it back to that topic, so that I think that actually might be the first time we've used the word in this conversation, which we're going on 20 minutes. And so it's just a good thing to be aware of as we're developing and creating these things. But yeah, I mean, just to summarize, I think making a mess is a creative act. And if it's already messy, that feeling of creating the mess can't exist because it's already messy. And so I think it's about making the canvas blank, like this wall, in order to then have the space to create and to experiment. So that being said, I think our language choices are a really important thing that we can focus on, and how we speak about ourselves, our goals, our days, our intentions. You know, what we speak about, we become, you know. And just a moment ago, you had said there's more than one way to skin a cat. I had just seen a post that spoke about taking cliches and then just changing it slightly, right? And how that can really open up creativity and also present things in a new way. So instead of saying there's more than one way to skin a cat, there's more than one way to skin a raccoon, you know, or whatever that may be. Or what's another cliche that comes to mind when I ask you to not say cliches?
Like the early bird gets the worm. But I was thinking, like, there's more than one way to use an apple when cooking. An apple pie, you can make apple strudel, you can just make apple sauce, right?
There you
So
go.
I think that is cool. You take something that's old and worn and make a small change. The early bird gets the worm. The night owl sees the stars. I don't.
I was going to say the early bird gets the cricket.
Right.
You know, from a simple standpoint. I like that you're taking the entire phrase and sort of transposing it into a different metaphor completely, but with a similar concept.
Essence. Yeah. That's cool. And it's very creative, you know. It's a very interesting. It's like replacing gears in a machine with the to get back to the messy thing, you know. That's why we love that saying, get messy, get better.
Where did that come from? Was that Tim Grover?
No, I made that up. That's
you made that up? Dude, that has changed my life. That is really good job, man.
Thanks, dude. I mean, I did it because it was like, how do I take the pressure off and move it forward?
Yeah.
And it's not get messy and messier until you just, you know, are lost. It's get messy, get better. It's a simple little it's like two gears. The get messy gets it started. The get better keeps it going. And you can always do that.
Yeah, man. And that immediately reminds me of, like, I often say to myself, action beats perfection every time. You know, the person getting it done is going to get way farther along than the person trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge becomes where get messy, get better creates momentum. It's that next step of refinement, which I always just say is relax into the next level, because things get more tense. You tense, you tense, you tense, and to be a hot air balloon that keeps elevating, you need to release that stress, that tension, those sandbags, which is the manifested body tension. And then finally, it's like, okay, as you're getting messy and getting better, generating momentum and relaxing into the next level, inevitably you're going to hit a breaking point. And you can either break down and revert into what you did, or break through and continue to rise and find your power in the present. And so that's an interesting thing. If your mindset, and I've noticed this, is fuck it, I'm going to make it happen, that is a bulldozer that can go through anything. Not, oh, I can make it happen if A, B, C, and D. Still, fuck it, I'm going to make it happen. And when you do that, you open your brain up to the unknown, the unlimited of like, okay, I might have to do something I've never done before. I might need to go someplace I've never been before. But then that breakthrough cycles back to, what the hell do I do? Get messy, get better. Okay, I can do that. I can refine that. And then keep relaxing into the next level as you keep breaking through, and each gear turns the next one. So
what's the third one?
The breakthrough mentality.
Breakthrough mentality.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then that whole system is to find your power in the present, which is the now. And that leads you to the next gear that I have, the next system. And this is all stuff from my book, The Change Theory, Volume 1, is to operate from a position of strength. And what does that look like? Well, you're not going to make things worse with your imagination. You're going to use the power of non-react, where, like you said, the words you speak and the language you choose creates reality. So what happens if you are constantly failing, constantly needing to have a new breakthrough? Your mind could be extremely negative, and all the thoughts that come into your consciousness could be extremely negative. And what do you do in that situation? You use the power of non-react. You don't react to them as you continually relax into the next level and break through those thoughts. And that's how you operate from a position of strength, by not reacting to the negative, not making it worse with your imagination, and ultimately falling in love with your fate, which is to use the negative elements within your life and to accept them, embrace the suck. And that allows you to be strong in the face of negativity, in the face of the unknown, and understanding that, hey, this is my fate. To encounter these challenges is my fate. And that if I don't make it worse with the imagination, if I get messy and get better and keep relaxing into the next level, I will make a breakthrough. I will find my power in the present, and I'll be strong doing it.
I love it. And I just love the way that the tree is contained inside the seed. And that first level, that first gear of get messy, get better, for me, it contains the entire cycle while also being just one of the gears. In the sense that I see in my head, I imagine that the mess changes subjectively depending on what level you're at. So for instance, like, this is a silly example, but say I've got a Toyota and it's got a little mud on its bumper. Get messy, get better. Okay, now I've got a BMW. It's got a little mud on the bumper. We'll get messy, we'll get better. And then I've got a Ferrari and it's got a little mud on the bumper. And then, what's better than a Ferrari? A McLaren.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then a Bugatti. We can just keep going up the scale,
Yeah, because if you can remember it, you can repeat it. And if you can repeat it, you can refine it. And if you can refine it, you can master it.
Say that again.
Yeah, so if you can repeat it, you can remember it. If you can remember it, you can refine it. If you can refine it, you can master it.
And where did that come from?
That's just the thing that I realized about my own psychology, is that it's great to have these esoteric things that are like really lengthy and they appeal to the ego and they sound pretentious. But when things get stressed, when you get tired, when you get hungry, when you get fatigued, what can you remember? You can remember get messy, get better. You can remember to break through. You can remember to relax in the next level. And these are cyclical ideas. They work off each other and they work off themselves. Like like you're saying, they are self-contained. And the more you can practice something, and that's because you can remember it, you're refining it. So when things get intense, you're able to fall in love with the storm rather than go, man, this is intense, this hurts, this sucks. You need to operate from a position of strength, because you're a different person when you look at it like that. You start to take on your shoulders all that negativity and use it as a vehicle to manifest positive emotion. Because if you can embrace the suck, you're using the principle of acceptance, and acceptance uses everything that's at your disposal. It says yes. Yeah, it's like improv. You say yes and. It's like sales. You say yes and. Not no. You're not blocking anything. You're taking the current.
Not no, but yes and. For sure.
You're taking the current of life and you're swimming with it to your advantage.
Yeah, it's like judo. And one of the principles of judo is if somebody's moving at you in an attacking motion, you take their momentum and you move it. Someone throws a punch, you grab the arm and you pull them, and you use their momentum to throw them over.
Very astute observation there, 100%. And it's like the judo of your mind. Grab the negativity and just being like, let's go with it. Let's go with it. And it seems counterintuitive, but at the same time, it seems very intuitive. Like, why would I spend energy blocking thoughts? How do I use them? Have you practiced any martial arts?
Not really. I mean, the biggest discipline I've had in my life has probably been a yoga practice, going to lots of classes. I did a yoga training at one point, and a lot of the philosophy of yoga I really embrace. It's the 8 branches of yoga, as I've spoke about in earlier episodes of this podcast. Yeah, disciplines are where it's at. I recently found this in the stack of my books, Think and Grow Rich. And I don't know if have you read this?
Thumb through it. I haven't read it in depth.
Yeah, it's a good one. There's so many concepts in it that are, everything draws on other things. But one of the powerful concepts in this one that I was looking at this morning is you have to learn to master your mind. You have to control your thoughts, because it's actually the only thing you can control. And I often think about that, like someone who's in solitary confinement who memorizes a book or something like that. It's like there are the mind is such a brilliant and infinitely capable, magical machine. I memorize a lot of lyrics for songs, and memory itself I find very fascinating in this. If I read a sentence one time, let's say there's 30 words, or maybe it's 2 sentences or 3 sentences. If I just read it once, I'm not going to remember it, right? You have to repeat it, like you said, and how that process happens, how it stays in the memory, I just find to be just it's an intangible, almost inexplainable kind of thing. The idea that, the average computer hard drive is 250 gigabytes, let's say. A gigabyte is a billion bits of information. So we're saying that our average computer hard drive is 250 billion bits of information. And a gigabyte, let's just say, is a movie, right? A high-def movie. So on your hard drive of 250 billion bits, you could have 250 movies. How does that relate and compare to the amount of information that the human mind and brain can store? And then there's, I heard someone say once that, someone memorized the Quran, like the whole thing, or the Torah, right? These incredibly vast, holy scriptures. It's really fascinating. When you look at people, for instance, like, Jim Quick, he's a master of learning techniques, and the memory palace seems to be the one that gets referred to a lot. You walk in the door, dog on the couch, and there's an apple on the table, and there's this like story, and each thing represents something else, whether it's the first letter of the word. Apple is A, which corresponds to a number, or et cetera, ad nauseum. You can use these systems in any way that you wish. But That's the power of the mind. Our mind has infinite potential.
Percent. So you said memory palace. I have a memory apartment, and right now I was using it. Three things within the last 3 minutes that you spoke upon. So you said control your thoughts. You mentioned a billion, and then you mentioned someone memorizing the Quran. So the first part, controlling your thoughts. Now, I would make the argument that you can't control your thoughts, only your interpretations. But it's like you have all these colors, and you can paint with your hands or paint with a brush. The interpretation is what you're painting with. The colors are the thoughts. So when you control your interpretation, you're able to use your awareness to become aware of the thoughts. And certainly you can influence the thoughts, but controlling them, that's something I fundamentally think you can't do, because I just purple elephant, and you just thought of a purple elephant. You can't just like not think of it, right? So that's how you can interpret that. The second thing is a billion. And I forget the first part of this, but basically a billion seconds is 34 years. Think about that. That's absolutely, you can't even comprehend. I'm 35. Like I've lived a billion seconds. That's banana land. And now memorizing something like the Quran or any religious spiritual work brings to my mind the power of a greater or a higher power. When you align yourself with a higher power, it allows you to do amazing things. Now, whether you believe in a God or not, I always say to that argument, look out at the stars. Look how vast the universe is. That right there should be evidence enough that there's something greater than you. That is undeniable. Like, to me, if you're going to deny God, that's like denying the universe. Now, people can fall into God being like some old guy with a beard and robes, and that's not how I see it. I see God as the underlying energy of the universe, much as the Eastern philosophy labels Chi. Funny that my last name is Chinappi. Am I right? Anyways, I think that, again, the interpretation of God not being some
Anthropomorphized.
That's the one. Not being that, and not being that with the negative human emotions of pride and anger and jealousy, but no, just being the energy, the underlying energy current of the universe, which is inherent in all things. And so by taking that interpretation, you can look at things in a very unified context outside of whose religion is right and wrong. So the mind palace is a very useful thing, but before you can have a mind palace, before you can have the Lamborghini to the BMW to the Toyota, mind palace, mind house, mind apartment, having 3 rooms and just trying to place ideas in them. And again, like, to do that, to cultivate that, to me, it's not like you're trying to like really hold on to it. You're relaxing into the next level as you're using your awareness to be present, listening to your conversation, but also having the awareness that this mind apartment is just floating up above there. And when I use it, I can look up and go, interpretation, control thoughts, a billion, and memorization.
That is fantastic. I love your explanation of how you utilize it. It's just such a, sometimes in conversation, I get kind of wowed. I'm just like, it's just such a joy to have the leisure time, the free time in our lives to even have these beautiful conversations. Some people are working, constantly at their landscaping job or their roofing job or their Wall Street job, and they're just constantly under pressure, and it's all business, and they don't have time to think about, essentially, we're philosophizing, right? We're just discussing topics about life and mind, and it's a beautiful thing. God as good orderly design, something I like to say. I heard that.
Oh, is that yours, or did you hear?
No, I think that I heard it. It's in The Artist Way, Julia Cameron. And
say that again. Good orderly design.
Good orderly design.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
I want to hear you expand upon that. You brought it up. What does that mean to you? How does that apply in your life?
That's a tough question. I mean, that's such a tough question, man. I mean, everything is so perfect in the way that it works. It's undeniable, though some people try to deny it, that there is an intelligent force in the universe that, whether you believe in intelligent design or not, it's just like so many things have to coordinate perfectly for anything to happen at all. I mean, let alone the fact that I'm talking into this metal and plastic device and you're 1,500 miles away and we're just, having this wonderful conversation. I really
real time.
In real time with the, 8 millisecond delay. I really like you mentioned the stars. I've spent a lot of time living in cities and, taking trips to rural places and hiking and, vacations, and spent time living in Costa Rica and some other rural places. But there's, light pollution in the cities. And when you go out to more natural places, there's less light pollution. You can see the stars. And when you take time to look up at the stars, I think there is something innate in all humans where that sense of awe, just it lifts some levers in the mind, in the DNA, and in the body, that help us remember that we're just a little piece of the whole thing, and that it's infinite. It's just so unfathomably large that to have too much stake in it's just the day-to-day things that tend to bother us are irrelevant. The small arguments or bickering or, a delay at a stoplight, or just these things, impatience, frustration, they're all irrelevant when we view our life in the context of that infinity.
Well said, and I agree 100%. So the first thing I want to touch upon is good, orderly design, God. And bring it back to interpretation, good, orderly design. Well, if the universe is a good, orderly design, what's the way to look at that? What's the interpretation that allows you to see that? And I heard this from David Hawkins. He's an author that I've referenced multiple times on the podcast, is that this is a perfect world. And you go, well, how is that so? Well, it's perfect if you were looking to evolve spiritually, because everything that comes across your consciousness holds the seed or the vehicle for you to become a greater version of yourself. And as you posted on our stories, anger teaches you compassion. People that are testing your or anger teaches you patience. It's all those things that you post that I'm like, wow, those are great. Second, the stars, they do that. Awe creates the humility that you're just a grain of sand on this beach. And over this past 20 weeks, every Saturday or Sunday, I've gotten up progressively earlier and earlier. And this past Saturday, I was up at 3:30 just to go run. I ran 41 miles, walk 41 miles on Saturday. And what I realized is I love it. I absolutely love getting up before the sun and going on these runs, because as I run, there's a few sections of my runs where there are no streetlights, and I look up and I see the stars, and it's just so beautiful. And I think, man, this is living, getting to push my body while enjoying the absolute perfection that is the pre-sunrise stars is unbelievable. Seeing Orion's belt or seeing the part of a crescent moon. And then also the world is so quiet, it's about to open up. And you get to that point in your run where your body opens up and you feel free and you just get into a good rhythm. And I'll be running and I'll look at the stars or I'll look at the moon, and I'll run past someone's house and I'll smell the coffee they're making. And it's just this, it just lights me up in a way that, it just takes discipline. But at this point, it's just fun. And I think the more you can touch base with that humility, the more you can find the interpretation that allows you to operate from a position of strength.
Oh, yeah, operate from a position of strength. Such a good concept. Now, I would love to ask you, so when you say you walked 41 miles, what does that look like? You know, what percentage are you running, jogging, walking? How many times do you change from running to walking and back to running?
Right. So at this point, my body's like hardwired. So I can't do it this weekend because, you know, and I couple those high movement days with high calories, donuts, whatever I want, cookies, you know, usually steak, Greek yogurt, stuff like that. So the first run of the day is typically the same. It's about a 20-minute run. And then I end it with like 15 minutes of walking. I come back home, I take in a pre-workout, and then I go on about probably anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours running, walking. I have a method where I'll run down hills early in the day and on flat areas, but then when I'm walking uphill, when I go up hills, I walk them because it allows me to keep my energy balanced. And so usually what I try to do is hit around 20,000 steps before I consume my first calories, and that's over 10 miles. And that has expanded. First, it was just hit 10,000 steps. Then it went to 12,000, then 15. And this past weekend, it was 23. It was just under 13 miles. And I start to play this single player game of how far can I push myself? And when I told you about this, you're like, don't you get bored? And then my answer is no, because my consciousness seems to lift the further into these days I get. And I start to go, okay, I know last week, when I ran past the gas station, it was 6:15. Can I get there by 6? And so I run similar routes because it allows I already know what to expect, and then I just refine it. And I use your concept of go a little faster. Let me go a little faster, a little faster. So I'd say the majority of it, I'd say it's 40% running, 60% walking at this point. And believe it or not, the next day, the first thing I do is I get up and I go for a walk, because I found
you've got to.
You have to. You got to, and the body will tighten up, and then you just open up. But one thing that was different this weekend, and I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous, up at 3:30, whatever. So I'm walking up my street, and I remembered something that Conor McGregor said. This guy's like, don't you feel pressure when you're walking out to the octagon? He's like, oh, I don't. I feel like I'm walking out. The chains are coming off. I feel free going in there. That's when I feel no pressure at all. And I was walking up absolutely butchered his accent. I was walking.
You did. Valiant effort, my friend. Valiant effort.
I was walking up the street, and my mind is like, oh, I got it. It was a duality. It was like, oh, I got this huge day of running, and I went, no. I'm free. I'm going to be free. And I just started really like channeling a lot of conscious effort into that freedom feeling. And man, I woke up feeling light and ready to get after it. And I did. So I'll ask you, when you're running, when you're about to take that first step on a long run, what's the thought processing that goes through your mind?
Yes, I can. I'd love it. At the beginning of the run is just the fact that I put the shoes on and then I made it out the door is just a huge achievement. I'm just like stoked, totally stoked. So yeah, because I mean, there's no adversity in that moment, you know. I suppose if I'm going for a record run, you know, because right now I've been stepping up my distances as I'm working towards the lifelong dream of running my first marathon. It can be a little daunting, but no, I mean, what's going through my mind is really just pure enthusiasm, you know. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah. There's
fair enough.
I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to come up with something profound, but there's not really.
No. Look, I mean, the more you can tap into those conscious mechanisms before you're doing something intense, the more you can really go, okay, this is what it is. So I'll ask you, when you hit that adversity, when you feel the cramp, when you're starting to feel a little thrashed, are you able to tap into your thought processing then? And what does that look like?
That's an interesting question. And actually, I would say that I'm not that good at thinking about how I feel in a different moment. Like as I'm taking a few more moments, you're just asking me another question. If I think what's going through my mind at the beginning of the run, there are definitely like, oh, how the fuck am I going to do this with like the long distance thing? But mostly it's the positivity. But when I hit the pain, people talk about the pain cave.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the phrase, I'm not going to die. It's one of the things I definitely say to myself. This ain't going to kill me. Will Smith has done this. David Goggins does this.
Speaking of David Goggins, though, yeah. I used one of his techniques, right? So once you have some days you come out and you're like running great. Other days you're just like, this is going to be a fucking battle. And there was a part early on this past Saturday where I've named some of the routes on the slingshot as like the third run that I go. And it's up a big hill, around a cul-de-sac, and then back down the big hill and all this other stuff that I won't mention. But I got halfway through the slingshot and my mind was just like, or at least a part of my mind was like, oh, you can just walk. And then I used the David Goggins 1 second decision. Keep going. And I'd used that in weeks prior. And so there was this blueprint where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to just keep that 1 second. And I had to keep it at the forefront of my mind for like 5 minutes. And then I was able to bridge the gap from the flow to the high adversity, quit, back into the flow. And I was using that 1 second decision for like 300 seconds in a row. And so that might be something for you to try, David Goggins.
Tell me. Yeah,
you can say yes.
More about that. Tell me more about that.
You can say yes.
You that from one of his books, or did you get that in one of his motivational tape?
I mean, his motivational speeches and books are one of the same at this point. But the 1 second decision, can you keep going? Yes. But it's the awareness. It's the spectrum of thought of the weakness to quit, but the operation to operate from strength is to endure and to throw yourself into it. And like, look, distance running, you enter the pain cave. I remember I did like 10,000 steps on shin splints because I forget her name, but she was talking about what can I learn in the pain cave? And actually, I think I did more like 15,000 steps with a really bad shin splint. And I didn't run for like 3 weeks after that. But within that cave, I just felt like an ice pick in my lower right shin. But I kept going and I found some energy in it and I paid the price. But it was like being hyper present.
I think when you go that far into the pain cave, it can unlock something in your DNA and in your muscle memory that you've never experienced before, though the repercussions can be a little bit more recovery time. My last long run was 2 weeks ago. I did just about 9 miles. And the next day, my left knee felt like there were razor blades inside the patella or whatever, and that it had been struck with a hammer. I did not figure out what the heck was going on. I'd never experienced pain like that from the inside of one of my knees. I've had various aches and pains over the years. I'm not getting any younger, but I hadn't had that kind of pain, and it was persistent for a number of days. And so it put me on a back step. And so I'm just about to get back into the consistency that I had, because in September I did 10 runs, in October I did 12, and I was aiming for 14 in November, and then this kind of happened. I also had this strange feeling in my right arch of my foot. It was kind of this tearing feeling, like deep inside, and it was just a feeling that I'd never had before. It's like almost like as if you would like trying to, like, not an Indian burn, but like pulling the skin apart. It just felt like this tearing feeling, but internally. And so I got a golf ball and I've been rolling the bottom of my feet. But there's so much to it, man. I've just, the more determination and the farther along these paths towards greatness that I make it, I just have more and more and more respect for the people that make it, the Goggins types, or, someone like Quentin Tarantino, who's managed to create these incredible creative works, and it's impressive, man. I mean, I just have so much respect for people that are able to make it great. For everyone that we know of in the, the popular sphere of famous names and likenesses, there's thousands of people that wanted to that didn't, And that being said, I've also started to think more deeply about how to live a good life is a worthy thing. The person that is a local supervisor or manager of, a local business or a grocery store or a library, or someone that coaches the soccer team, like, it's a beautiful thing to just, appreciate someone's life and whoever they are, whether or not they make it to be, a recognized name, but we all, especially as men, especially as strong, willful alpha men that we are, we have, the desire for legacy that not everybody has, but in the last month, I indulged myself and I allowed myself to watch Troy and Gladiator, which I had never actually watched with a thoughtful eye. I'd seen them in passing in social settings, whatever. But there's some really significant stories. I bet you have some thoughts. I can see your gears turning.
So I'll touch. I actually don't care about legacy because I know in 100 years we're going to be forgotten outside of a few of us, and I think it's silly. The couple seconds after you die, I think that your life is like a dream. You have a dream and you're like, there was a horse and there was a hill and there was this girl, and then like the further into the day you get, you kind of.
I want to hear about this girl.
Right? It turns out it was the horse. But no, the further away from the dream you get, it kind of just goes away. And I think that's what happens after death. I could be wrong. But in terms of legacy, I found this thing. It's not about what you do. It's about who you do it with, which is why this project has been so cool, because we both have grown and evolved as men, trying to create something of value for other people, not just ourselves. And so I think it's immature to want fame and to want that much like attention, because when you really get into the process of whatever you're doing, whether it's writing a book, whether it's writing a song, whether it's writing a screenplay, when you become process driven and you are present, you're engaging. Your mind isn't thinking about who's looking at this. Your mind is thinking about what am I doing and how well am I doing it, which is great. And that's enough. That in and of itself, when you are fully engaged in an act and you're in a flow state, you're not worried about what it's going to be. You're worried about being it. You're in it. And in terms of Troy and Gladiator, the classic films, right? Now, Troy, there's a great scene where Brad Pitt's character is talking to, I forget her name, but he says to her, the gods envy us. And she's like, how can that be? And he says, it's because we're doomed. And because we're doomed, everything is so much more beautiful because it's finite. It ends. There's value in that. If you just have a good thing that goes on forever, the value of good kind of falls. But just like seasons, that's why Christmas is special. That's why fall is special. It's finite. It's not just like Arizona where it's the same damn thing every day, which, that can be good. But the change is where the excitement happens because you get used to things. So you watch Troy and Gladiator. I love the idea that we're doomed because, we are. And it makes everything more beautiful. It does. What's something that you took out of it?
Oh, man. Well, the biggest thing I would say that hits me when I think of the films Troy and Gladiator is the impressive strength and diehard fighting courage that is represented in the characters in the films that are going to battle, going to war, and the intensity and the level of viscerality. I think I just made that word up. That it comes across because to put on armor and a shield and all this stuff, and to wield a sword that looks like it weighs 15, 20 pounds, and going to almost certain death, running at someone that, you don't know if you're going to kill them or they're going to kill you, and you don't know if you're ever going to see your loved ones again. I mean, the level of courage and might and ferocity that is required to embody that, I find to be extremely motivating. And also sobering, because especially in today's world, we never really get too political in these conversations that we have, but maybe we will in some upcoming episodes. But it's a lot of crazy shit going on. USA sending $200 billion to Ukraine, and the funding the both sides of the war, leaving billions of dollars of equipment in Afghanistan, and this Hamas attacking Israel, and the funding on both sides. And then it's just absurd, man. It's just absolutely absurd. And the constant warring in the Middle East it's been absurd, because all life is sacred and nobody deserves to have their life taken. And at the same to the same degree, whether or not the history books are true, clearly in the legacy of empires and the millennia that have occurred on planet Earth, empires rise and fall, and there are conquests to conquer land and area and to take it. And it's not pretty, it's not nice, it's brutal, and it's a lion eating a gazelle. It's saying, I want that. Good riddance to you. And
that makes me think of a meme that I saw that I thought was so spot on. It says they use Superman to represent history when history actually was Highlander.
I don't know what Highlander is.
From The Boys, is it Highlander or Homelander?
I don't know either.
So it's pretty much a bad Superman who just he's the most powerful being and he just kills people. But yeah, no, look, when people complain about current society, it has its flaws. Every current version of society does. But this is the most peaceful time to be alive. Realistically, people are brutal, right? Like, people are evolved apes and chimpanzees and apes rip each other's faces off. We just have a bigger brain. They're brutal animals. And like this is the exception, because the rule is we are brutal as human beings to each other. Like Middle Ages, just killing people with swords. And to your point, why you like Troy, what resonated in my head is there's an act of ceremony of putting on the armor, picking up your sword. Like when he picks up the dirt and he runs it through his hands. So that's why I love lifting weights, because I pretty much wear the same couple things. And this kid at my gym is like, why do you always wear the same thing? I'm like, that's my uniform, man. Got my wrist wraps. I got my towel. I like getting the chalk and hitting it and it pops up. And then I go to work, and I love that act of ceremony, because the more you can make something ceremonious, the more power comes with it. And I think that it's almost been lost within today's society.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the commodification of everything and the transactional nature of our society, it takes away. The intentionality is lost. You look at buildings have no aesthetics. You look at a building that was built 200, 300, 400 years ago, different parts of the world. There's a beautiful, aesthetic, intricate, eloquent designs. And, it's rampant in today's society that everything is short-term gains. Speaking of long-term gains, you sent me a copy of, and thank you for this, Alex Hormozi's $100 million Leads. Have you been able to thumb through it at all? And what are your thoughts on some of those concepts? And where does that lie for you in your world of sales and your thoughts of how you're going to become more successful in your business adventures?
I have thumbed through a little bit. I like how it's laid out so a kid can read it, because if you write something, you want it to be simple, leave no questions to mind. I have mentioned it with some of my team on the selling, give something away for free and then add value to that and then double off that. There's another group of people I'm working with who I'm about to give a copy to. So I'm curious to see what a more experienced business mind does with it than myself. I know we just actually crossed the hour mark here. We can go on a little longer, but I wanted to throw it to you. Have you looked at $100 million leads and what has jumped out in your mind? Just kind of maybe this is our closing thought, because I do have a thing at one that I
no worries. I like that our episodes are around an hour. I think it's palatable. There's some podcasts that I've been looking at that are 25 minutes, and they're a lot of gems of wisdom, but they're one person presenting some ideas usually, whether it's but these conversations, I think an hour minimum is good. The things that jump out at me, I mean, at first glance, I tend to analyze a book from a product lens, like how is the product designed itself. And so I think it's quite interesting that it's textbook size, that it's a hardcover, really makes it feel like this is, a tome. This is a something substantial. And it says volume 2 at the top, which makes you think, okay, there's a volume 1, which is his previous book. And there's a copyright at the bottom of every page, which I think is quite interesting in the age of digital proliferation of ideas and, incontrollable copyright violations, or, with people just reposting things on Instagram, et cetera. Anyway, it's just very obvious that it's like, this is my intellectual work. Here it is. And it makes it just feel that official. And like you said, writing it so that it's accessible to the widest audience, I think, is a key. It's written very simply, but so many of the concepts just make a lot of sense. Value. I mean, people like Gary Vaynerchuk talk about this a lot, and some of these fundamental systems concepts they're so basic, and you could read hundreds of pages, you could read dozens of books all about these principles, but when we understand them at their fundamental, at the essence of them, that's where the power exists. And so I think with $100 million leads, obviously there's a lot more that I need to read. I need to finish reading the book. I'd like to read through it. Creating value. Someone is more likely to pay you if they've already received value from you, right? And so that concept alone, I think, is worth $100 million.
Give, and it'll come back 100%.
Yeah. Well, there's so much more that I could say, though. I do love digital marketing, and I do love sales. I think it's just brilliant. I mean, the biggest thing that I'm realizing right now, and at this stage in my life, is to be a better student. So I've taken some paper and put it with the books that I want to read, and each book that I'm reading has a pen with it, so that I'm actively taking notes while I'm reading. Because there's been a lot of books I've read where I didn't really underline anything, didn't really take notes. I just read it, but it didn't really make it into my memory mansion,
One great thing to do with that, and rather than break the flow of reading, pull out Instagram, take a screenshot, take out the marker, and just dot on the page. So that way at the end of your reading session, you'll have like 5 screenshots with 7 dots, and you'll know like what to go back in your phone. And I would do that for a while, and I just write the concepts down, and I'd think about them and try to expand upon them, so they slowly integrated into my own mental acuity.
Since I do actually have it right here. So yeah, I mean, just one of the things is I put a sticker on it. I love books, because I have so many books, and I realize, like, I just want to read the books, But what I had put, so obviously I stuck there's a stack of sticky notes inside the cover, so I can access them if I want. But the thing I wrote, I wrote at the top of these papers I was talking about, but I wrote, be a great student, take lots of notes, review them thoroughly, use flashcards for the most impactful concepts. That's where it's at. I dated a girl that went to Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard, but I grew up around Cambridge. And when I think back to the classes that I aced in school, those were the tactics. Take lots of notes, review your notes thoroughly, and utilize flashcards for the most important concepts. And then obviously discussing with friends and, having study groups and stuff. But, I think being a student of life is a powerful thing. And if you're not growing, you're falling behind. And so like we like to say in this podcast, keep growing.
Keep growing, and beautifully said. And my final thought is that as you review these things and you put them on flashcards, when you practice them, they manifest in your life. So we could never say get messy, get better. But if somebody were to watch the podcast from where it was episode 13 to episode 23, they would see someone getting messy and getting better. So it's not saying the message, it's living it, it's practicing it. And as you're a student, the goal of being a student is to learn. And rather than teach, which is to tell and communicate, learn is to practice and to actualize. So as you do that and it becomes part of you, you manifest your ability to be a better student, which then again creates a blueprint for you to learn and evolve and to keep growing.
Oh man, Damien, it's been such a pleasure. Keep growing. To you listening out there, thanks for following along. Thanks for watching. Hope you got some good ideas out of this episode. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, all that good stuff. Check out our blog, evolutionnow.blog, where we recap all our episodes. We're also starting up a newsletter shortly. So until next time, keep growing.
Catch us on episode 24 coming up in a couple weeks. Keep growing.